And hello once again, my name is Lupus, and today we're going to be talking about how to learn from past papers. But before we get into that, if you appreciate these videos that I make, and I've made a whole bunch of them, you can support me if you so desire on things like Patreon or by checking out my books. But we're going to get to that later. So, past papers. Now, this is going to be just a brief little video talking about the benefits of using past papers as a way to study. Now, let me first just say, past papers, right, which means, exam papers from previous exam periods, vary a lot based on university, high school, wherever you happen to be studying, and also they can vary a lot based on their quality and availability. Now, sometimes things can change, right? A curriculum can change, which would render older past papers either completely useless or just less beneficial. Sometimes, and also when there's a big curriculum change, it can mean that old past papers now become virtually useless. However, they can be very, very helpful when you do have access to them. But they should not be seen as the be-all and end-all. You do need to study, but past papers are a good way to basically practice for exams. And that's also a very important thing to note there. They help you to practice for exams. Not to actually understand the concepts, but to practice specifically for exams. So, some of the things I want to just point out here, when you're looking over this kind of stuff, you should be looking over the past papers themselves, yes, the actual questions, doing the questions, that kind of thing, but also you look at the memos and the rubrics. Now, I make a bit of a distinction here, memos and rubrics. A memo, also known as like a marking scheme, various names for them, is where all of the answers are found. However, not every kind of question has a memo or a marking scheme. Some will have a rubric instead, and rubrics are generally for essay questions, especially, where it'll say something like, let's say it's worth 100 marks, just to make it easier, so 100%, 100 marks. Okay, it's worth 100 marks, whatever this essay is, and the essay will say, alright, it's worth 100 marks, and 50 of those marks are purely for your ability to, your actual content, right? 30 is for your language, and 20 is for, like, say, references and stuff like that. Okay. Now, you know that you are being marked on various things. If, for instance, there's no language aspect, you're being marked purely on content, then things like, say, spelling and grammatical ability, not as important. That's why it's important to look at these rubrics to know what you need to be focusing on. If it says, listen, 20% of this essay, we're going to be marking your ability to spell and have proper sentence construction, stuff like that. If that is actually part of it, you need to pay close attention to that. So, past papers can show you what you need to be focusing on over other things. Okay, now also, of course, it shows the structure and style of exams. That is also very important. Because as I said, and as the next point says, it teaches you, this is basically how to learn to write for exams. Now, the reason this is important is because there's kind of an art to writing for exams. Writing for exams is not the same as actually applying this information in a way that it would be useful in the world. Writing for exams is specifically tailored to how the marker wants you to look at it. Now, that is also a thing to keep in mind. Some subjects can be subject to bias. Different markers might mark things in different ways, which can be quite annoying, right? Or if rubrics and memos and stuff change, the marking parameters might change. As someone who has done marking before, this is something that can happen, where they'll say, one semester they'll say, okay, things have to be marked this way, and then they change it and they say, no, we're going to be marking things this way from now on. So you need to know how they are actually marking you. And you need to learn how to answer exams, specifically tailored to how they want you to. So this can take quite a lot of finesse. Usually it's very helpful to have a tutor who can go over some of the stuff with you to show you in your specific subject. And that's something important. Every subject will be different. And that's why I also say here, content subjects versus essay subjects. Now, this isn't necessarily a definitive classification system. This is just how I see it. Content will be things like, say, short questions, multiple choice questions, stuff like that, where they're basically saying, listen, 2 marks for a question, and then they'll say something like, explain whatever. Which means you kind of need to define it and maybe show how it's applicable in the real world to get both of your marks, right? So you pay attention to how many marks something is worth. If, say, it says something like, give 2 examples of whatever, and it's for 4 marks, just giving 2 examples isn't enough. You need to actually explain. You give an example, then you explain why you chose that example for your full 2 marks, and you do that twice for your full marks. See, paying attention to how many marks there are is very important because it can show you how you should be answering questions. And now that's like sort of content subject, sort of saying, this is what we want. Essays are different. Essays are much more complex because essays force you into an argumentative state. You have to have an introduction, which sets out what you're going to do, and then you have to argue your points, usually giving... Now, I have done a video about academic writing before, so I'd recommend checking that out for how to write essays, but you generally will have things like a point, quote, comment system where you would sort of say, you give the point, whatever it is you're talking about, you give an example of that thing or a quote that backs it up, and then you explain further. They want you to actually go into these things and explain them. That's what exams are about. It's not just rote memorization anymore, at least in content-heavy subjects, right? Maybe in things like maths, you need to just be able to basically do the exact thing as it's been given to you. But in a lot of other subjects, you need to be able to argue. You need to be able to discuss the concepts and actually show how it works. Okay. Now, the next thing that's really, really great about past papers is it will tell you how long you have to write the paper. Which means if you're doing past papers, you can prepare yourself and get used to writing within a certain time period. To be like, okay, I'm going to be writing this. I only have 2 hours to do it because that's how long I have in the exam. So I need to do it in 2 hours now. And that can really help because as you do more and more past papers, you'll basically be seeing, okay, if I do more and more past papers, I'm seeing how much I can do, where I should spend more of my attention, etc., etc. Because that can really help a lot of the time. Especially, say, essay questions you can kind of ramble on forever. So I would often say, first do your sort of short answer questions, get them out of the way, get as many marks as you can, and then spend the rest of your time on the essay, which I have a nice big meaty, thing that you can really work through. And this is also, when it comes to time limits, but also other things, you can determine your weak areas. Where are you bad in the subject? And that is really, really helpful. Because if you can determine where you are good and where you are bad, you can focus less attention on where you're already good and more time on where you're bad. Because you're already good at those things you're good at. So why keep studying them as much? You need to really focus on the stuff you're really bad at. Because if you can get those marks up, you'll do better overall. So past papers really, really help you to determine weak areas because it shows you exactly the kinds of questions that you're going to be asked, and then you need to learn how to answer them. And the last point I put here is that you need to follow this up with correct marking. Now, when it comes to marking, say like a maths paper, physics paper, they're usually very much, this is the answer. So you can just look at a memo. However, with say English, literature, a lot of like sociology, a lot of more content-heavy subjects, which requires arguing your point, you generally need to go to someone who knows what they're talking about to mark your stuff and show you where your weak areas are, to say, listen, you're not good at this thing. You need to work at this thing. This, very, very good. This, bad. Right? You need to find people who can actually help you with that, which is why a tutor is very, very useful to have, but also not everybody has access to a tutor because, of course, that is expensive. Anyone who says, just get a tutor, not everyone can. I understand that. But usually also with teachers, if you show you really care, they're usually more willing to also actually help you. So, because like as a teacher, someone who doesn't care, I don't really want to put my time and effort into you because you're not going to put any time and effort into this. Whereas, if you actually care, if you're actually trying, I want you to succeed because I can see that you want to succeed. So, find people that are willing to actually help you, and then you will do a lot better. And that's just kind of a very, very quick, brief overview about past papers and everything. So hopefully it's been useful, just a little primer. If anyone is preparing for exams that's listening to this and what have you, good luck. I hope that you do absolutely great. And for everybody else, if you appreciate these videos, and I made a whole lot of these videos, if you appreciate it and you want to support me, you can support me on Patreon or by checking out some of my books. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. It doesn't matter. But something like a nice little like, comment, subscribe. Those always help with, silly YouTube metrics. So, otherwise, good luck for whatever comes for you. I know having to do exams sucks, but you can do this. So, yeah, have a great day, week, and month ahead, and good luck.